Welcome to the Skeptic Zone, the podcast from Australia for science and reason.
Yes, it's the Skeptic Zone, episode number 131 for the 22nd of April, 2011. Richard Saunders here with you, visiting my good friend Jim Wilshire on his lovely farm at a place called Talmalmo, right in the southern bit of New South Wales alongside the Murray River. Beautiful, gorgeous to be down here for a few days to help Jim celebrate his birthday. I'm sitting here just outside his farmhouse, surrounded by beautiful, lush green countryside. You can hear the odd cockatoo, and there's cattle over there past the fence. Wonderful, idyllic spot for a few days. Coming up on this week's Skeptic Zone, I speak to David Tyler from the Launceston Skeptics in Tasmania about their adventures visiting a mind-body-wallet, mind-body-spirit, mind-body-soul festival in Launceston as skeptics. In other words, they turned up there, had their own table, and were giving out skeptical advice. Into the heart of darkness, you might say. That interview coming up soon. Following that, we hear from Australian Skeptics editor and chief executive officer Tim Medham, a recent bit he recorded for ABC Radio, all about universities in Australia giving out, well, strange degrees in very strange courses. Woo University, you might call it. After that, we have Dr. Rachie with Dr. Rachie Reports, talking about the use of sciencey-sounding words in advertising. Would you like some quantum with that? And to wrap up the show, we have Maynard with his spooky action at a distance. Now, Maynard is going to visit Mike Dawson, who has a room, a house, in fact, a whole house full of dinosaurs. Yes, dinosaurs. And the last little bit of the show is a brief interview with a good friend of ours, David Barwick, who bought me yet another power balance band, wristband holography sort of thing. Now, before we really get into the show, a few little other points. I've decided, well, I've been encouraged and asked, and we received a donation to the Skeptic Zone, to go vegan for 2 days. I'm happy to do it. Why not? What fun. Lovely pumpkin soup, vegetables. Ooh, I can think of some great vegan food I can get stuck into just for 2 days. Not a problem. And that's thanks to, on Twitter, Flex-A-Vegan. But I don't think I'll be doing it forever. A couple of days, why not? Good fun. And hey, if you want to go vegan for a couple of days, what's the harm in that? Put that cow back. Thanks, Jim. Oh, Jim, happy birthday, by the way.
Thank you.
Jim's standing over there at the entry to his house with Minnie the dog. Minnie the dog, the cattle dog, the intelligent cattle dog. Now, I'd like to thank listener Seth Wolfson, who sent me a copy of his book all about forensic sculpting. This is the sort of things you see on TV where they get a skull and they carefully put little bits of modelling clay on it and build up the face again for the police to have a look at. What a fascinating area of endeavour. And you can check out Seth's work at www.forensicsculpting.com. Thanks, Seth. What an interesting book you've sent me. And now we have a very important message that Dr. Rachie has asked me to bring to you before we get into the show. On the 20th of April, 2011, a draft report was posted from the Australian government saying that homeopathy is unethical and without efficacy. According to the report, their findings have come about owing to recent claims that homeopathy is a substitute for vaccination. Homeopathy itself is under fire, having been implicated in 2 recent deaths in Australia. Also, the finding of the UK Science and Technology Committee that no taxpayer money should be spent on this quackery. Now, this is the first time the Australian government has made such a strong statement about homeopathy, and we at the Skeptic Zone welcome this development. You can find out more about this story by visiting the Skeptic Zone's blog, which is Dr. Rachie's blog, The Skeptic Book. Also, with the newsletter that comes out with this episode, if you subscribe at www.skepticzone.tv, there's a link to the recent story that I appeared in on Today Tonight, the TV show, about homeopathy. Now, I played the audio on last week's show. Well, I've put the video online now for you to see. All right. As I sit back here and enjoy the drifting clouds over the hills and the screech of the cockatoos behind my shoulder, the wind and the birds, I'll let you enjoy the Skeptic Zone. Joining me now from Launceston in beautiful Tasmania, it's David Tyler. Hi, David.
Hi, Richard. How are you?
I'm pretty well, and I'm very interested to hear more about your adventures going to the Body and Soul Festival as not a skeptic in disguise, not just having a look around, but actually being there and representing the skeptical movement. How was that? How did that pan out?
Well, it panned out very well. We were, and quite frankly, Richard, we didn't really think we'd pull this off. It came from a discussion we had at one of our Skeptics in the Pub meetings, and someone said, "Oh, why don't we go along to it?" And we said, we won't be allowed to go. We thought, well, we should ask, and we went along and had a meeting with the organisers, and sure enough, we got ourselves a booth, and away we went from there.
That must have been an interesting meeting. What was the organisers' reaction to your request?
We had gone along there pre-prepared with a little manifesto and a code of conduct, if you like, because we wanted to make sure that if we did go to this thing, we were not in any sense a Trojan horse. We wanted to go in good faith, up front, true to ourselves, and not in any way hiding what we were about. So we had this manifesto, and the organising lady was really rather good about it, and she was quite surprising. She took the view that it was okay to have an alternative viewpoint expressed there, and if any of the other stall holders were threatened by that, well, that was their problem. So that was a perfect approach from our point of view.
That's good. That's, quite an open-minded, if I can use that term, approach from the organisers down there. It's over the years it's occurred to us up here in Sydney, because there are two Mind Body Spirit or Mind Body Wallet festivals a year here. They go for about 4 days, and we always think it would be very difficult for us to have some representatives there over the course of the whole festival. But the one in Tasmania, the one in Launceston, I gather, didn't go for so long.
It went for 3 days.
Oh, that's a bit longer than I thought, yeah. Yeah,
3 full days, and we only had 8 or 9 members, and we drew up rosters. We decided that we really ought to have at least 2 people present on the stall at any one time, just in case. I mean, quite frankly, we went through all these horror scenarios in our minds once we realised this was going to happen.
Yeah.
You know, what if someone confronts us and gets angry? What if someone comes up and says, "Oh, look, can you tell us about stall number 37? Is that a scam?" We had to think all those things through, and have approaches that we thought were reasonable, but still were true to our own values. So we had our 2 people, and we had a ball. It was really good, and we met some really interesting people. In fact, believe it or not, there are a couple of people who actually came to the festival to talk to us.
Oh, really?
To talk to the Skeptics. So
wow.
That was a bit unusual, but we got to know some of the other stall holders, and there were some interesting characters. There
always are. That's very true. Did the situation arise where someone was indignant that you were there, or a member of the public said to you, "What about those stand 37? What do you think of those people?"
Not overtly. In fact, we were quite surprised. We got some people who just sort of walked past, looked down their noses and at us. But the thing we feared more than anything was not hostility, but indifference. And And we didn't really get any hostility. We got some people who wanted to have spirited arguments with us, and that was fine, spirited discussions.
Yeah.
But there was no one abused us. I suspect that the ones who weren't that pleased about our presence probably just stayed away. But we had to decide also, Richard, what we wanted to achieve from this. It's not just a case of turning up. You have to have a plan. So we thought, okay, well, what do we want to achieve? And we decided that really it was about encouraging people to think a little bit particularly before they spend their money on things. So to that end, we produced a series of little cards that we call A Thinker's Guide to. And it was the Thinker's Guide to Reflexology, to homeopathy, psychic reading, and so on. So we produced a bunch of those, and we thought that's simple little things that someone might read. You could read it in 30 seconds.
Yeah.
Because the people in that sort of market are not going to want to read 5 or 6 pages of stuff about homeopathy. They want a little bite-sized thing, and then they can look for more stuff if they want to.
Yes, absolutely. I think that's the best approach, because if you're going to engage somebody's interest, the last thing you want to do is give them a little booklet, which they can't possibly absorb or read or understand in a short time if they're just sort of casually walking past. Now, I found these things to be so interesting over the years, and I've always encouraged my listeners and skeptics I've met and other people to go along, at least to go along to one of these mind, body, spirit, mind, body, wallet type body and soul festivals, because I always think it's a valuable learning opportunity for your average skeptic to understand what's going on out there in well, I don't know if you'd call it the real world, but that's that area. Had you been to one of these things before yourself?
Oh, yes, I had, Richard. But I have to say, looking at it from the inside, as it were, gave an entirely different perspective. And when you're sitting there for hours on end watching things and talking to people, you really do get to see it from a different viewpoint. And particularly, we had some interest from some of the other stall holders who would come and talk to us, and it was almost as if we were kind of accepted as part of the carnival, if you like. and we were kind of suddenly we were insiders instead of being outsiders. and in fact, a couple of the people actually confided in us. There was a tarot reader a lady who told us that there's no magic in this. I'm just a counsellor. The cards don't mean anything, but I help people and I talk to them, which of course is fine if people aren't having serious problems where a trained counsellor could perhaps do something more worthwhile for them. And there was a guy, one of the other psychic readers, who took a bit of a shine to us, and I'll call him Marvin.
Yeah. And
Marvin spoke to us at length several times over the 3 days, and he told some. He was a real sort of a carny fella. You couldn't help like him, him. He's that sort of a guy, and he would tell us anecdotes about his experiences, and one in particular, which if you've got time for me to relate, he spoke about the time when he was doing a reading for quite an elderly lady, and he didn't really have any idea. He said, I have no idea what to say to her, but I happened to have noticed outside the building in the street there was an old Austin car parked. And so for no other reason than that, he said to her, what's happened to Austin? And the lady reacted with great surprise, and it turned out that, and then she said, we buried him yesterday.
Oh, no.
It turned out that she had misheard him, and it was Oscar,
really?
Her husband, Oscar, not Austin. And of course, it was just one of those lucky hits.
Oh, wow.
That these people have from time to time. So those sort of things, and I'm sure they wouldn't have confided in us like that if we'd have just been skeptics going up to, have a chat with them. So we were kind of accepted on the inside a bit.
Yeah, it reminds me of a funny situation where, a number of years ago, I was at one of these things here in Sydney, and I struck up a conversation with a woman who claimed to have witchcraft powers, and I sort of took her aside, and I said in a low voice, you got to admit there's a lot of crazy people here, to see what her reaction was, and she looked at me and she said, there are a lot of really crazy people here. So I thought that was quite funny to get that to get someone like that confiding in me at that time. And that person who will call, I don't know, Glenda, for a lack of a better word, initially said that she would gladly take the Skeptics $100,000 challenge because she could do her claim anywhere, and eventually she backed out. So, but there you go.
Yeah.
Did you have
Marvin wants to come and have us test him. We haven't really advanced that yet. We'll have to work out some way of doing that. But he seems to be fixated on the idea that he can tell whether someone has moved into a new house or bought a new house or something.
Wow.
That seems to be his shtick. I'm not sure why. Maybe he's had a bit of success along those lines.
Well, it would hardly surprise me if he had a bit of success along those lines. It's a classic. The moving the new house. You're thinking about it. You just have. You did a year ago. You will next year. Haven't moved house. I bet you will. That sort of thing. Yeah.
You can't lose, can you? With that sort of thing. But one of the best things that happened, and it was, it's only a fairly small thing, but big in its way. A young mother came to our stall and was having a chat with us, and she read a couple of the Thinker's Guide to cards. And before she'd come to our stall, she had bought a homeopathic whooping cough vaccination.
Wow.
Which she intended to give to her child or children.
Wow.
And having read some of our material and having a chat with us, she actually went back and got her money back.
That's quite a win.
Yeah, I think that was really, really good.
That is quite a win, and it's a win for the child, certainly.
And there were quite a few. There were sort of other skeptics, although not in the formal sense as we might understand them. There are some of the husbands who were sort of brought along by their wives were glad to see us and glad to have a chat with us.
Did you have much of an opportunity when you were there to leave the stall and wander around to see all the fun? Yes,
we did. We did have time to do that, and I spoke with a number of people. I spoke with a very interesting lady who was glad to tell us that she was 73 or in her 70s, and she was into reflexology. And I have absolutely no doubt, Richard, of her sincerity. She totally believed in what she was doing, but a short discussion with her, it became obvious that she didn't really have much of a clue about science or even anatomy, but she had lots of people who said the doctors couldn't cure me, but you did, and she was very sincere.
Well, I mean, this again reflects my own experience. The lack of general or basic scientific knowledge of these people. Well, no, I don't want to be too blanket about it, but many of these people certainly, which makes having a conversation with them or a constructive argument with them very limiting, because often you can't get to first base because you're not speaking the same language, as it were.
That's right, and they will often cite pseudoscientific proof, and then in the next breath say, well, science doesn't know what it's talking about. So, you get that sort of thing. Our stall was not very far from an applied kinesiology outfit.
Oh yeah,
which had about 3 or 4 massage tables, and they were doing their thing, and watching that for hours on end, you're just struck by how absurd the whole thing is. And it looks like nothing more than, banishing evil spirits with hand waving. It's just astonishing when you actually get to see it for some length of time.
Oh, it is. Yes, it's. I must agree. It struck me the first time I saw that, and somebody was standing behind someone and almost doing a sort of a strange hula dance, but waving their hands at the same time and then wringing their hands as if to vanquish the evil energies. And I can't imagine what it must be like to see that hour after hour.
Well, that's right. And I didn't realise that they did the foot movements. You mentioned a sort of a little dance they do. These ones were doing, these were doing they'd stand there with their feet sort of a normal width apart, and then they'd bring their feet together and then back out again. So that was obviously part of this ritual that this particular crowd were undertaking. But they were treating little children. There was one baby there at one stage, and you just wonder why people pay money.
It is. It's difficult. I agree. It is difficult, but again, it's no reason for skeptics not to go to these things, because people on our side of the argument really do need to see what is going on out there and why people are going to these stands and parting with good money for unproven and sometimes dangerous claims. Now, do you think has this experience put you off or encouraged you to do it again next year?
I would love to do it again. In fact, we were offered a chance to present a little, like a seminar, if you like. They had these rolling seminar type things happening on the stage, but frankly we weren't equipped to do that at this stage, because we were a bit like the dog that chases the car and catches it, and then now what are we going to do? So we had to. We had no logos, we had no banners, we had nothing. We had no, and of course there's no one you'll ask. How did you do it? Because it's fairly new ground as far as I'm aware.
Yeah.
So we had to scramble to get those sort of basic things done. But next year, if we're invited back, and I hope we will be, we'd like to do something. Well, we might actually set up things like our own free cold readings.
Yes.
We might even have someone make us a skeptometer or something, where you grab the handles and it gives you a reading of your credulity, perhaps. I don't know. We'll think of something.
You might consider doing one of my favourites, which is the applied kinesiology body balance tricks. Yes,
in fact, that's very much on the cards. That's a good one to do, and that's one that can be done in that sort of format in a fairly straightforward manner. So that's certainly
absolutely. And you could give away one of our favourite things, which is the placebo ban from skepticbros.com.
Yes, indeed. We'll do that. There are a number of things we can do to really. We learned a lot from this first experience, so we can hopefully enhance it next year.
So that's coming up in mid-March next year, or there's more? Is it more frequent down there?
I think it's only once a year. I'm pretty sure it's once a year, and I assume it'll be about the same time of year next year. So we'll have to get in touch with the organiser and say, look, we'd love to come back again and do it again, bigger and better, perhaps. We did have, we handed out a lot of cards. We had at our meeting that followed that, we had some interesting new people turn up, including some ghost hunters.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah. And they told us all about they've got their, machines that read the electromagnetic radiation, and they had cameras and voice recorders and all of that sort of thing. And there were a couple of ladies. There was one lady, and I think they came along really just to give us a bit of curry, because one of them in particular was talking about the magic of crystals.
Ooh.
And we were saying, okay, tell us about that. And we kind of in a gentle way suggested that perhaps crystals weren't all that magic, though some of them are very lovely. And then she said something like, oh yeah, well, if they're not magic, what about quartz watches?
No.
She did. And that kind of took us aback, because as one of our members said afterwards, of all the things she could have presented as one of the mysteries of the world, I could be wrong, but I don't know that science is that baffled by how quartz watches work. She could have talked about dark energy and how do you know that's not spirits and things, but no, it was quartz watches that were the big mystery. So interesting.
There you go.
She hasn't been back.
Oh dear. Now, I'm delighted that there is good, solid activism down in Launceston, in the beautiful state of Tasmania. Do you have a handy website people can visit?
Well, we do. If you just Google Launceston Skeptics, you'll find us. Mm-hmm. And, anyone who's down here and likes to join us in the Royal Oak Hotel, first and third Thursday evenings at 5:30. They're welcome to come along and say hello.
First and third, so twice a month.
Twice a month.
Oh,
yes.
Wow!
We have one sort of a structured meeting where we might have someone speaking on something, and the next one's just a skeptics in the pub where we all just shoot the breeze.
That's fantastic. So everybody down in that neck of the woods, or if you care to have a look, Google Launceston Skeptics, Tasmania, and take it from there. Well, David, thank you so much for chatting to me and our audience about your adventures. I do take my hat off to you, going into the lion's den, but having a good time.
Thanks for your interest, Richard.
Hallo aan alle Nederlandse luisteraars. Op dit moment bent u aan het luisteren naar de Skeptic Zone, voor wetenschap en kritisch nadenken. Voor meer informatie ga naar www.skepticzone.tv.
Australian Skeptics has been around for more than 30 years, and over that time we've investigated many different forms of pseudoscience and the paranormal. Everything from flying saucers and astrologers to the more serious and sometimes life-threatening subjects like cults and pseudo-medicine. Many of these investigations have involved, shall we say, eccentric individuals. But let's be frank, there are a lot of very strange people out there with equally strange beliefs. But these sorts of beliefs aren't restricted to eccentrics. We've found that such beliefs are shared by many in supposedly responsible and reputable organisations. I've met one federal politician and government minister who believed in ghosts, and of course there have been some in Parliament, and I do mean more than one, who believe in young earth creationism. Throughout our existence we've adhered religiously, if I can use that word, to the scientific method. We believe that evidence on both sides of the coin should be provable and repeatable. Pseudoscience, by definition, is not. So you can imagine how disappointed we've been to see some Australian universities teaching highly dubious subjects, particularly in medicine, without any evidence to support them. I'm not talking about discussing such subjects in history or philosophy courses. That would be justifiable if taught in an academic sense. I'm also not talking about researching the science, if any, behind these subjects. That's something we would encourage, as it fits in with our basic premise. What I am talking about is teaching them as legitimate areas of training, with the result that students come out the other end as practitioners. The topics that concern Australian skeptics include chiropractic, homeopathy and acupuncture for treatments beyond analgesic effects, which regularly appear in university calendars. At one time or another, there have also been cases of individual academics or even faculties promoting young earth creationism, psychic powers, spiritualism, auras, tarot cards, astrology, etc., which have appeared either in formal university courses or in special education services provided on university campuses. We asked the university's umbrella group, the former Australian Vice-Chancellors Committee and now called Universities Australia, if it had an official position on the bona fides of courses offered at Australian tertiary institutions. The answer was no. It was up to the individual institutions. They said that if any courses were of concern, we should contact the institutions in question. So we did. Australian Skeptics approached 11 universities and one Institute of Technology and asked about their specific diploma, degree and postgraduate courses that they were offering. We mentioned some of the more outlandish claims that have been made for these sciences, like chiropractic can cure learning difficulties and asthma, that acupuncture can treat AIDS and palsy, that naturopathy is rooted in mysticism and spirituality, that component courses in kinesiology and aromatherapy were offered, and especially that homeopathy, which featured in many courses, has no basis in science at all beyond a placebo effect. We said we were especially concerned that these subjects were being offered under the imprimatur of a university, a place of higher learning, and that there was no resiling from the fact that anyone looking at such a situation would naturally presume these subjects had been proven to be true, when the truth is far from that. Naturally, we expected all the universities to rise to the challenge and come back to us with either passionate defences of the subjects or wishful thinking, a mea culpa, and we'll remove it from our course list forthwith. No such luck. We heard back from 4 institutions, RMIT, Murdoch, UTS and Charles Sturt. Sydney Uni and Edith Cowan University both promised to get back to us, but neither did. Macquarie Uni got back to us only recently, 2 months after we'd approached them. Only the Dean of the Faculty of Science at Charles Sturt responded at length and engaged in further correspondence. We thank him for that. The rest of the responses were largely perfunctory, basically saying we know what we're doing and that the courses meet the current standards. For instance, Murdoch University's chiropractic program meets the demanding standards of the Council on Chiropractic Education. Murdoch Uni cited the Chiropractic Board of Australia as a new national body overseeing professional regulation. The University of Newcastle, which didn't bother to get back to us, has published a statement on its website. Quote, "These therapies have been selected because of burgeoning community interest and usage of these complementary therapies." I think that means market forces. One response in defence of running such courses suggested that the students were sincere in their beliefs. Creationists are sincere in their beliefs. UFO proponents are sincere in their beliefs. All eccentric individuals in this world are sincere in their beliefs. Anyway, despite the protestations of those who bothered to reply, it is still evident that under the imprimatur of universities and their reputation for academic probity and accuracy, the public, students and no doubt many academics would regard these areas of activity as having been endorsed by such institutions. No matter how much the subject is encased in references to research and evidence, the view is that these areas have been given the seal of approval. And in many instances, that is exactly what has happened. The fact that several universities have set up clinics in acupuncture, chiropractic, Chinese medicine and naturopathy to treat students, staff and the public is indication enough that this is not a moot point but a statement that, yes, they are proven, despite the fact that they are not. Do geology courses teach dowsing? Do paleontology courses teach creationism? Do astronomy courses teach astrology? So why teach homeopathy in medical courses? Universities need to seriously justify the inclusion of such courses, not on the basis of deference to some internal industry standards bodies, but by applying a little critical thinking for themselves and really seeing if any of these practices are evidence-based. Just like they do with anomalous claims in physics or chemistry or archaeology or any other science. If something seems out of the ordinary, and a lot of the claims made by practitioners are out of the ordinary, then universities must investigate before they offer their stamp of approval. By and large, we feel the response to our inquiries has been pathetic and worrying, to say the least. Finally, it's interesting to note that a case has been put to have RMIT's chiropractic paediatric clinic closed because it is, quote, teaching inappropriate and potentially dangerous techniques that target pregnant women, babies, infants and children. Loretta Marin, who has investigated many dubious medical treatments, has done a major report criticising chiropractic's claims. Statements from many leading scientists and experts, both local and overseas, back her up. She wants the clinic closed until such time as evidence can be produced that these treatments support the claims made by the course lecturers. Produce the evidence? We wish them luck.
Did you know Jeff Wagg participated in an alien psychic challenge? Did you know that George Hrab is an interstellar singing sensation? For these and other stories you won't hear on the Skeptic Zone, go to the Bolingbrook Babbler. That's www.bolingbrookbabbler.com. If you have any doubts, just remember this. The SGU couldn't debunk any of our stories, even when we offered them $5. So read the Bolingbrook Babbler for the unbelievable truth. That's www.bolingbrookbabbler.com.
Now it's time for Dr. Rachie Reports with Dr. Rachel Dunlop.
Hello listeners and welcome to Dr. Rachie Reports. An easy way to make products sound high-tech and scientific is to associate them with words that sound sciencey. I call this name out of a hat science because the results make about as much sense as randomly pulling scientific terms out of a hat and sprinkling them on a page. One industry particularly guilty of such crimes against science is the cosmetics caper. Indeed, Choice magazine made an example of L'Oreal Elvive for exactly this behaviour at the 2009 Shonky Awards. The consumer watchdog was quick to remind us, however, that L'Oreal are by no means alone in blinding us with dodgy science. They noted terms such as clinically proven, dermoclinical trials and in vitro testing are littered throughout cosmetics advertising. And to highlight their disdain, Choice made a hilarious parody video for a product they called Pro Fecal B. If you watch the video online, and you can find the links in my blog post, Watch it to the very end, where Choice really tells us what they think of cosmetics companies. But the hijacking of scientific terminology and technology is certainly not confined to cosmetics products. Every second product advertised on television these days seems to claim to be scientifically tested or validated, often in a clinical trial, the results in such fine print that you can hardly read them. And marketing people know that dusting your product with a light sprinkling of quantum or clinically tested can be a lucrative exercise. And hey, if it sounds sciencey and it looks technical, then it must work, right? Who needs that pesky scientific evidence? So hair testing is a very good example of this. It's actually a legitimate scientific technique, and it's used in drug testing in sport and also for the detection of heavy metals in poisoning. The concept is straightforward. Blood supply from around the hair follicle provides nutrients and other extraneous material to the hair, including any ingested drugs, medications, and heavy metals, and then these are absorbed into the hair shaft and carried along with growth. Now, through a complex process of enzyme or acid digestion to break the chemical bonds between the hair, and various high-end detection techniques such as mass spectrometry and HPLC, the substances of interest can be sensitively measured. But as you might expect, hair testing in alternative medicine doesn't bother with all the fiddly science steps described above. And by the way, I've only described just a few. Rather, you just need a machine with some flickering dials, some flashing lights, and a sprinkling of quantum. Now, as it happens, I first came across one of these machines at a well-being festival where it was promoted as, quote, the affordable way to find out what is making you sick. For $195, which is apparently affordable, a small lock of hair was placed in an empty beaker, lights flashed, dials flickered, and a list of food allergies appeared on a printer. Now, apparently, if I avoided these foods, I could cure a wide range of ills, including such things as eczema, asthma, irritable bowel syndrome, headaches, premenstrual tension, flatulence, fatigue, and the list goes on. And when it came to sensitivity, this machine must have been using an awful lot of quantum because according to the pamphlet I was given, it could tell if I was allergic to Coca-Cola or the diet variety, and even differentiate between allergies across different brands of chocolate. So, being slightly sceptical about these claims, my colleague decided to put the technology to the test by sending via mail order 2 pieces of hair from the same person but identified as from different people. The results came back as predicted. The profiles of the 2 people's allergies were totally different, except for one interesting thing. Apparently both persons were allergic to carrots. So obviously this is not a rigorous scientific test, but such divergent preliminary results do not instill me with confidence about the accuracy of this machine, or indeed that my $195 was well spent. Perhaps a better name for this quantum machine would be a random allergy generating machine. Now, I don't pretend to understand quantum mechanics, and according to physicist Richard Feynman, who has been credited with saying, quote, "It is safe to say that no one understands quantum mechanics. Apparently I'm not alone." Now, beyond understanding that the discipline deals with the world of atoms and subatomic particles, I'm as clueless as the next bloke. But I do know one thing. I know what's not quantum mechanics. It seems the people with the $195 a pop magic hair testing quantum machine might need to step up for their Nobel Prize in physics, or they're just trying to blind us with science. You decide. This week's Dr. Rachie Reports has also been published as a blog as part of the Fairfax newspaper's blogs called National Times. You can find it through The Age, WA Today, the Brisbane Times and the Sydney Morning Herald. If you search for the National Times and Skeptic Science, I'm a guest blogger for this week. And if you have some time, please head over so you can increase my page hits, and also, if you feel like it, leave me a comment. And until next time, this has been Dr. Rachie Reports.
Dr. Rachel Dunlop is one of Australia's foremost media commentators in matters concerning so-called alternative medicine. She has appeared on national radio and national television. Dr. Rachie is available for interviews, and you can contact her at rachel@skepticzone.tv.
Hi, I'm a skeptic.
And I'm Bigfoot.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure you're not. You shut up, y'all. I'm Bigfoot, and I'm running wild all over the U.S. of A.
Well, you're not very well documented.
Says you. I left tracks and possum innards all over the place.
Well, my name's Blake Smith, and along with my co-hosts, Benjamin Radford and Dr. Karen Stolzno, we take a skeptical look at the evidence for all kinds of monsters on our show, Monster Talk.
Other monsters? Like who?
Well, our show's pretty new, but we plan to take a look at lake monsters, sea monsters, Mothman, the Chupacabra, the Yeti, Orang Pendak, ghosts, ghouls, goblins, zombies, demons, and we might even check out the monster that lurks under your bed or in your closet.
Hey, you didn't say my name in that list.
Honestly, we've already done 2 episodes on Bigfoot, but the topic does keep coming up.
Hey, I know where there's a big old monster.
Where?
In my pants.
Don't go there. Instead, go to monstertalk.org or look up Monster Talk on your favorite podcast aggregator.
You mean iTunes.
Shut up, Bigfoot.
Here's Maynard's spooky action at a distance.
Well, have we got something for you today? I tell you, we've got Mike Dawson here. I'm in a room that I'll just let you describe it, Mike. I mean, I've been in some unusual rooms, and this is one of the most unusual. What is this room full of?
It's supposed to be a dining room, but it's actually full of casts of museum quality dinosaur bits, mainly skulls.
And skulls from all sorts of periods. Okay, I'm just going to pick one at random. I'll just tap it so the listener can hear. And that's the teeth I was flicking then. What is that? Describe the size and what animal it was.
That's a phytosaur, which was a version of a crocodile. It wasn't a crocodile, but similar to a crocodile from the, that would be Triassic period. So that's 250 million year old. It's from America, that one.
And these are casts of diggings, just to explain how you got it.
Well, I got that from a museum. They're normally excavated on a dig site, and then they're reconstructed, put together, and then they do a cast of them, which is normally what you see in a museum. It's not the original, it's normally a cast. And I swap with museums for other casts I've got, or buy them, or accumulate them in whatever way I can. And that's a cast of a phytosaur.
So how many people do you run into on the internet and around the place anywhere that are really into paleontology bone casts?
It's quite a few, really. Quite a few.
And with all the collectors we talk to, there's a fascination and an intense interest. What fascinates you about dinosaur skulls?
Just a little kid that never grew up. I was right into dinosaurs when I was little, and then I discovered women. Then thought there's no future in that, and I've gone back to my first love.
Now, do you remember what the first time you saw a dinosaur on the television or in print? Do you remember what it was where you went, hey, that's cool?
Lipton Tea had collector's cards, and there was a silver triceratops. And I thought, how long has this been going on? I've got to know more about a silver triceratops. I could even say it. I called it Triceratops. And I just got hooked. And then I discovered T-Rex, and that was it. Good night, nurse.
Now, we've got a T-Rex skull here on our right. Is that correct?
That's right, yep.
Now, what would be the age of that, and whereabout would that have come from?
That's the one that Barnum Brown found in 1907. That's North America, in Montana. And it's not a big one. There's 2 types. There's gracile and robust. That's a gracile version. So that is possibly a male. The males are smaller than the females. So that's from the American Museum of Natural History, that one.
And it's look, what's its size? Describe. Oh, look, this is what it sounds like when you tap it. So it's a fairly sizable, solid thing. What's the size and dimensions of that?
The skull's about 5 foot long. The animal, I should talk in metric. The animal was 14 metres long, was up to 7 to 8 tonne. The most recent one, and everyone knows about, is called Sue. It was 30% bigger than this one.
Wow. So and it just dominates the room you've got here. There are so many things. And in the case, just to make it just that little bit extra creepy, in case the dinosaur jaws weren't scary enough for you, we've got a selection of Hominids skulls. Now, so they're not the actual skull that was around at the time. They've been, what material is it? Just a resin? What do they use for them?
Most of it's resin, some of it's plaster. I've copied some in plaster. In fact, I've done some in resin too. But the majority of the stuff in there is resin. It's harder wearing plaster. You drop it, it smashes. With the resin that doesn't, it's easier to handle, and it's lighter too.
Look, it's an interesting obsession, and I'm just wondering, to me, looking at them from an outside, not a collector, great collection of skulls, but I'm just wondering which would be your favourite and why. Like, I like the one on the bottom right there because it's got that spooky cavity look in the orbit of the eyes. But what's your favourite from this selection here, and why? Because to the outsider they look fairly similar. So, what makes one stand out for you?
I'd say this collection here, possibly the black skull, the second on the left there. It looks very primitive. It's got the classic low forehead. It's not far removed from it. Very old. That's Australopithecus. The one next to it, the little tongue child, part of the skull is eroded away, and you can see the shape of the brain where clay has filled the brain case and hardened, and then the bone has rotted away, and it's left the impression of the brain. I like that one.
And the thing to remember, for you to make a cast of all these, that means that all these creatures have had to die in the correct circumstances to cause a fossil, which would be?
It's pretty rare. It's pretty rare for an animal to fossilise. Conditions got to be right. It's got to be preferably not scavenged by other animals and then covered fairly quickly with the floodwater normally, or sand, and then the conditions have got to be right for minerals to seep into the bones. The actual bone is still there, but the little gaps in between the bone are filled with minerals flooded in by floodwater. So that's why they're so heavy. You got the minerals filling the little gaps in the bone, but the actual bone's still there.
Oh. And I thought the T-Rex, I thought the male T-Rex skull was a big thing, but then we go into your dining room and get under the house. What is this here? Oh, look, you thought the noise the other one made was big. Listen to this. That's a biggie. What am I staring into the barrel of? And there's even a tongue in this one.
This is a reconstruction of T-Rex, the head of a T-Rex. That's how it would have looked in life.
Has anyone successfully worked out what they might have sounded like by recreating their bone and throat structure?
Not really. Every movie you see with a dinosaur with a T-Rex in it, they're roaring, and I don't think they would have roared like that because they scare the prey away when you roar. Lions don't get around roaring when they're hunting. Yeah. So they would have roared, I guess, but I can't say nobody knows what they sounded like.
Yeah. And this is just amazing. How long have you been a collector? You mentioned as a kid, but this is something that takes a lot of time. This is something that takes almost obsessive compulsive sort of thing to be able to do, because is it when you're making the resin skulls there in your studio, do you just get in the zone and notice that 6 hours have gone?
Very much so. I've been playing around with it for about 20 years, but you get obsessed with it. I read something the other day, somebody pointed out that if you have a collection and parts of the collection are in the bedroom, you're obsessive.
What parts would you put in the bedroom? Is it bits that you've got to get to, or are they your favourite bits? I mean, is that how it works? If the bits are in the bedroom, does that mean it's something you've got to work on, or is that one that you can't let out of your sight?
No, it's just convenience where you store them. I've got stuff stored in every room. It's just where there's a hole you can put something in.
And what is the process like to work on them with the resin? It's part sculptor, part archaeologist, part paleontologist. It's, part psychiatrist.
Yeah, well, I call it paleotechnology. I wouldn't be classed as a paleontologist. I'd be classed as a paleotechnician, where you're reconstructing missing bits, filling in bits that are missing, and a little bit of sculpturing. You do more sculpturing with the plaster than you do with the resin. You can't sculpt the resin all that much. So resin's mainly used for a straight copy once you've got a mould. But with plaster, I do a bit of sculptor work.
Well, hang on a minute. What have we got over here? This is it looks like the bottom half of a giant denuded kangaroo, complete with hip joints.
This is the
Hang on, I better tap it for the audience. Can I tap it and it won't collapse? So again, fairly solid. What have we got here?
This is the hips and the legs, the basic skeleton of Albertosaurus or Gorgosaurus. It was ancestor to T-Rex. If you imagine T-Rex was a lion, this was a leopard. And this is just the base of the skeleton. The rest of the skeleton is in this room.
Okay, now I'm walking through the frame. That's how big it is. And here we have a room jam-packed with, again, more dinosaur skulls, including, smaller than the other one, But that dinosaur is half laughing, half mocking me. Mike, what's the story?
That's a Brachiosaurus, and they do mock you because there's nothing in the head, as you can see. That's a skull of a Brachiosaurus. I cast that in plaster. That's the skull of the Gorgosaurus that's in the hallway, and those vertebrae sections there are the rest of it, and there's leg bones and stuff somewhere else, arm bones.
Wow.
So the whole skeleton's here.
Wow.
Those boxes are full of specimens up there.
Wow. The room is very busy in the bone department. Now, I was thinking with this earlier, this would be great to share with the public in some way, somewhere. Is it had in the office from anywhere to put some of this on show, even at a temporary basis?
I had a couple of things planned, and both of them fell through. So I'm in a situation where I'm looking for someone to host this, and I'd share the gate with them. It is a good collection, and every kid on the block's going to want to see it, but I've got to get somewhere where we can exhibit it. So if anyone's interested, contact me and we'll talk.
Yeah, look, well, Mike Dawson's got a whole stack of very interesting dinosaur bones that are large and would look great if you've got a museum or an exhibition space that would be good for them. Get in contact with us here. We'll put you in contact with Mike, and maybe you can cut a deal because, it's filling his house, and it looks great. Thing is, when you do get kids over here, the kids have a habit of pulling things off and breaking them? Ever had a bit of a tooth pulled off by an aggressive kid?
They have the habit of sticking their head in there and feel those teeth. They're going to hurt themselves. That's what worries me.
Yeah, even though the jaw doesn't move, the kid could put his head in there and do it. So you'd have to put a bit of a barrier around this one there. But it's funny, even though they're not dead, they can still hurt you.
Oh, yeah.
Even though they're long dead, they can still do some damage.
Very much so.
I imagine what they would have been like when they were hunting you.
Yeah, well, no, it wouldn't have been fun. This thing would have chased you down at 40 k's an hour. You would not run away from it.
Well, but it's good things that humans didn't share the planet with them at the time.
I don't know. I would have liked to have been back there.
Yeah, look, a lot of people would like to know what they're like, but now, do you think you could have got away from them by hiding or doing something tricky that our big brain could do, or you reckon once that they'd found you, there was no way out? I saw Jurassic Park. They can open doors.
Yeah, well, don't believe everything you see in Jurassic Park. They also said in Jurassic Park, if you stood still, they couldn't see you. These things had the eyes of an eagle. They had excellent vision. Their nose, the turbinals in the nose curled. They were wrapped around so they had extra surface area in the nasal cavity.
So they could smell you out.
They led their life by their nose. They had excellent sense of smell, great vision. They were very amazing animals, these T-Rexes, and no, you wouldn't get away from it.
And after all, it took a massive asteroid strike to get rid of them, didn't it?
Very much so, yeah. The KT event, yeah. They figure that's what wiped everything out, all the big stuff.
But after the KT event, we've got something that's from our very own continent here. Please describe what this one is. To me, it looks like, what's it a distant relative of that we have now?
Well, it's a distant...
Hang on, I have to do the tapping thing. That's how we get things on it. So it's a bit smaller, but...
That's ancestor to the monitor lizards or goannas. That's called Megalania prisca. Lived in Australia up till about 6,000 years ago, very recent. It was an ambush hunter. It was like a big Komodo dragon. It was an ambush killer. It would just lay near a water hole, wait for a diprotodon or something to come up to have a drink and just grab them and lacerate the legs. And they wouldn't get far because they'd die through shock and loss of blood.
And that's what our alligators get up to these days too.
Pretty much, yeah. It's like a Komodo dragon. Would have lived a similar life. It was up to 7 metres long.
Oh. And you've said there's so much on your to-do list. What is the very next thing? Is there something here that's yet to be processed?
I'm working on this Triceratops skull out here.
We're just going out into the kitchen. That gives on. Now we're going through the kitchen into the backyard, folks, to have a look at. It looks like Look, even I know that's a Triceratops, which, it's Triceratops?
Triceratops. This is my no-frill Triceratops. It's got no frill on it. I'm going to have to construct a frill to put this on display, but the skull's too good not to do anything with, so I'll build up a frill for the skull.
Now, was a Triceratops a meat-eater or was it vegetarian?
No, it was a vegetarian. It was a herbivore.
A herbivore, so it doesn't get the big teeth, unfortunately it doesn't get big scary teeth.
Doesn't get the big scary teeth, but got the big scary horns.
Wow.
It's like a big rhinoceros.
That's amazing. Well, look, thanks for sharing this collection with us and your obsession too, because, I mean, it's great to see people that have a passion for something that you've just never encountered before. And I hope, someone does pick up the chance to exhibit this somewhere, because it's great. I mean, and you haven't got enough room in your house for all this stuff, Mike.
Rapidly running out of room. Even the shed's full.
This is Eugenie Scott, National Center for Science Education. You can find us at www.ncsc.com. Come see us if you want to know anything about the creationism and evolution conflict in the United States, or more's the pity internationally these days. We are a clearinghouse for information on this vexing but certainly very interesting problem. Come and find out more about it.
Well, we don't see much of them anymore, but they're still about. It's the old power balance wristbands and all their imitations and ilk. But a good friend of the Skeptic Zone, David Barwick. Hi, David.
Hello.
Has brought this to my attention, which I have right in front of me. It's called a mystic band. It looks almost identical to a power balance band, except the hologram is a yin and yang sign, which is a very nice looking hologram, I must say. And you picked this up, and it says it right on the packet there for only $3.
Yes.
That's. I'm staggered. I'm staggered that somebody would bother importing them and selling them so cheaply. But it is from the reject shop, and you were just shopping there and happened to spot it.
Yes, and I thought you might be interested in it.
I absolutely am. But the interesting thing about this packaging, David, I must say, apart from the fact that it's pretty boring packaging, it makes no claims.
Absolutely no preposterous claims.
Nothing. In fact, it says Mystic Band, $3, the reject shop, imported by so-and-so and so-and-so, made in China. That's it. No strength claim, no balance claim, an honest placebo band. Can you believe it?
No, I didn't, so I told you about it.
And you've been you were discussing with me just earlier that you've noticed some people you know wearing the so-called real thing and been trying to persuade them maybe that's not the best thing to have on.
Project managers at work who should know better.
Should know better. Well, that's a good point, because a lot of people were hoodwinked by it, and you can't find them around anymore because the government took action. But I'm pleased to see that somewhere like the reject shop is selling them at such a small price. Hopefully people will buy this one without any claims of miracles and undercut the people out there who are selling them for $60 or $70 a pop. But I'm glad that you're out there. We've got our eyes and ears out everywhere on the Skeptic Zone, so thank you very much, David.
That's all right.
Thank you for listening to the Skeptic Zone. Well, I'm still here sitting outside Jim Wilshire's house in the beautiful countryside of southern New South Wales, just near the Murray River. Cockatoos are still screeching in the background, the birds are singing, and there's some chickens behind me in a chicken run. It's all very pleasant. And I note that inside the house Jim has started a nice fire, so I might go in, sit back, have a nice cup of coffee. Until next time, this is Richard Saunders signing off from beautiful Talmalmo alongside the Murray River in Australia.
You've been listening to the Skeptic Zone. Visit our website at www.skepticzone.tv for comments, contacts, and extra video reports.